The Battle of the Coral Sea was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Two massive fleets went to war without ever seeing each other. No battleships fired broadsides. No guns exchanged fire at close range. Instead, the fate of empires was decided by aircraft launched from carriers hundreds of miles apart. When the battle ended, both sides claimed victory. But in reality, it marked a turning point that stopped Japan's expansion and quietly shifted the balance of the Pacific War. By May 1942, Japan appeared unstoppable. In less than 6 months, it had crushed Allied resistance across the Pacific and Southeast Asia. Pearl Harbor was in ruins. Hong Kong had fallen. Singapore had surrendered. The Philippines were lost. The Dutch East Indies were occupied. Japan now controlled a vast empire stretching from Burma to the Solomon Islands. But expansion brought new risks. The farther Japan pushed, the more exposed its supply lines, and the more territory it had to defend. One of Japan's next objectives was Port Moresby, a key Allied base in New Guinea. Capturing it would give Japan control of the Coral Sea and place northern Australia within range of Japanese bombers. It would isolate Australia from the United States and threaten Allied communication lines across the Pacific. To Japanese planners, Port Moresby seemed like the next logical step toward total dominance in the region. But this time, the Allies were ready. American codebreakers had intercepted and partially deciphered Japanese communications. They knew an operation was coming. They knew where it was headed. And they knew when it would begin. For the first time in the war, the Allies would meet the Japanese fleet on something close to equal terms. The American response was swift but risky. 2 aircraft carriers, USS Lexington and USS Yorktown, were rushed into position under the command of Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher. They were supported by cruisers and destroyers, but their success would depend almost entirely on their air groups. The Japanese force was formidable, built around the fleet carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku, supported by a light carrier and a powerful invasion fleet. Both sides' new carriers were now the decisive weapon of naval warfare. Neither fleet could see the other. The Coral Sea is vast, stretching thousands of miles across open water. Aircraft would have to find the enemy, attack, return, refuel, and do it again, all while avoiding enemy fighters and anti-aircraft fire. Every decision depended on incomplete information, mistaken sightings, and the fog of war. On May 7th, the first blows were struck, and they were confused. American aircraft, acting on faulty intelligence, attacked what they believed was a Japanese carrier force. Instead, they found and sank the light carrier Shoho. As bombs and torpedoes tore the ship apart, American pilots sent back a message that echoed across the fleet: "Scratch one flat top." It was the first Japanese aircraft carrier ever sunk in the war. But the victory was only partial. The main Japanese carriers were still out there, untouched. Meanwhile, Japanese aircraft struck back. They attacked the American oiler Neosho and its escort, the destroyer Sims. Sims was sunk quickly. Neosho was left burning and drifting, its crew stranded at sea for days. Both sides now knew the battle had begun. On May 8th, everything came down to one decisive exchange. At dawn, American and Japanese aircraft launched almost simultaneously. Hundreds of planes climbed into the sky, racing toward estimated enemy positions. Pilots searched endless stretches of ocean, scanning for smoke, shadows, or movement. When the fleets were finally located, there was no hesitation. Japanese aircraft struck first. Dive bombers and torpedo planes descended on the USS Lexington and USS Yorktown. Anti-aircraft guns filled the sky with fire. Fighters twisted and turned in violent dogfights overhead. Torpedoes slammed into hulls. Bombs exploded on flight decks. Yorktown was hit but remained operational, damaged yet fighting. Lexington was struck repeatedly, suffering catastrophic internal explosions as fuel vapors ignited deep within the ship. At the same time, American aircraft found the Japanese carriers. The Shokaku was hit by multiple bombs that tore through its flight deck, igniting fires and rendering it incapable of launching aircraft. Zuikaku escaped direct damage, but lost many of its planes and experienced pilots during the fierce air battles. Though still afloat, the Japanese carrier force was badly mauled. The battle raged for hours, wave after wave of aircraft clashing above the sea. Pilots fought until fuel ran low. Damaged planes ditched in the water. Rescue ships scrambled to recover survivors. Smoke rose from burning ships as both fleets struggled to assess the damage. By the afternoon, the truth became clear. The USS Lexington could not be saved. Fires spread uncontrollably through the ship. Explosions rocked its interior. The order was given to abandon ship. Destroyers moved in to rescue the crew as Lexington burned. Finally, torpedoes were fired to scuttle her, sending the proud carrier to the bottom of the sea. The loss was devastating. But strategically, the outcome told a different story. Although the Americans had lost a carrier, the Japanese invasion of Port Moresby was stopped. Without air cover from their carriers, the invasion fleet turned back. For the first time in the war, a major Japanese offensive had been halted. The Battle of the Coral Sea ended without a clear tactical winner. But strategically, it was an Allied victory. Japan had suffered losses it could not easily replace. Experienced pilots were gone. One carrier was damaged beyond immediate repair. Another was forced to withdraw. These losses would have enormous consequences just 1 month later at the Battle of Midway, where Japan would suffer a catastrophic defeat. Equally important was what Coral Sea proved. It proved that Japanese naval forces could be stopped. It proved that aircraft carriers, not battleships, now ruled the seas. And it proved that intelligence, coordination, and preparation could offset early defeats. For the Allies, Coral Sea was a psychological breakthrough. After months of retreat, surrender, and disaster, this battle showed that Japan was not invincible. The tide had not yet turned, but it had begun to slow. For Japan, the battle marked the first crack in its momentum. Expansion had reached its limit. Every new operation now carried greater risk. The empire was growing too fast, stretching its resources and exposing its weaknesses. The Battle of the Coral Sea was not a dramatic, decisive victory like Midway would be. But without Coral Sea, Midway might never have happened. It was the quiet turning point, the battle that changed the direction of the war without announcing it to the world. Two fleets fought without ever seeing each other. Thousands of miles of ocean decided the outcome. And when the smoke cleared, the Pacific War had entered a new phase, one where Japan would no longer advance unchecked, and where the Allies had finally found their footing.